Hello, people of the internet. This is Kaiju Noir,
And Pete.
and here it is. Finally, the chance to talk about the last three movies that we saw over the last couple of weeks. Now, I bet you guys are wondering, why hasn't it taken us this long to review movies that have come out so long ago? Well, funny enough, when we were trying to get back into reviewing movies that we've seen in the theater, I kind of hope to put these movies out on reviews out on time, kind of like what we used to do back in 2013. Of course, that didn't happen, but we've mentioned before it's been like a conflict of schedules. But would you like to kind of explain what's been going on, Pete?
This. Okay, so basically, I still work at Radio Shack, and my Radio Shack isn't in the best place of employment right now. We officially only have 2 employees at the store. That'd be my manager and myself. So pretty much having work every day, basically as much as I can, just to keep the store going. So that's where all my time has been. That's where my summer break has gone.
At this point, you've sort of become like the only person working. Well, one of 3 people working there, right?
Oh, yeah. Because when you say 3 people, one person comes in once a week, and that's it.
Yeah.
So what can I say?
And it's like we rarely have time to meet up with each other and go to the movies, and we have barely enough time for that, let alone the time it takes to record these things.
Yeah, no, like all of last week, like I worked like 8 days straight without a break, constant like 9 and 10 hour shifts, no breaks in between. I'm like I am in no place or position to watch or even make sense of a movie. Yeah,
or you just formulate thoughts and all that shit.
Yeah.
And of course, and I bet you guys can say, well, why don't Kaiju Noir does it himself? It's like, I don't want to do that. I enjoy, doing this with my good best friend Pete.
It's much more fun being able to have a conversation with someone else that's regarding the movie.
Especially when we're about to talk about some serious shit. But first, before we get into the shit, let's talk about the one good movie that we've seen recently, and that was Ant-Man, the final film of Marvel's Cinematic Universe Phase 4 collection of films that started with, I believe, Iron Man 3, then Thor 2.
Did you say Phase 4?
Did I say Phase 4?
You said Phase 4. I'm like, what are you saying?
Phase 2. Okay, it's been pretty late. Okay, it's the final film of Phase 2, which started with, I believe,
Iron Man?
Iron Man 3. Then Thor 2, Captain America, Winter Soldier, then Avengers 2, and then Ant-Man. So basically this movie takes place right after the events of Avengers Age of Ultron. Scott Lang, he's his former criminal trying to set himself straight, trying to get a good job to support his child, who still looks up to him as a hero. And he happens to stumble across the opportunity to become Ant-Man, which it was identity, like technology that Hank Pym created in order to make make anyone shrink down to the normal size and grow back. And he uses it to uncover some corporate conspiracy plot that involves the what's his name, Darren Cross, who was a former protege of Hank Pym, who wants to use the Ant-Man technology to create Yellow Jacket
to sell it to the military,
which is actually run by Hydra. So yeah, Scott Lang has to take on the identity of Hank Pym, get all his criminal buddies together, and put a stop to Darren Cross from trying to take over the world. Pretty basic plot, kind of really silly, but here's the thing, a lot of the Marvel movies have kind of gotten this reputation of being more lighthearted, more fun, more sillier movies than what DC's trying to do.
The whole let's make this really dark and just the colors of the movie just really depressing and moody.
Yeah. So this is Ant-Man. It's kind of takes that tone that all the Marvel movies kind of have, and then taking it to an extreme. This is a straight up action comedy. Mm-hmm. And that's not a surprise, considering that the director of this movie almost was going to be Edgar Wright, who had previously done Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, The World's End, I believe Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And but unfortunately, he didn't actually become the director due to creative differences with him and Marvel. But he was a big producer of the film, I believe.
Really?
And I think, from what I've heard, 90% of that original script he developed was still used in this movie. And watching the movie, I could tell it felt like an Edgar Wright film.
That's something I definitely would have never known myself.
And I basically it feels like the style of editing, the snappy dialogue, it just feels like him. It's got very I know I mentioned before, energetic. Marvel's movies have always been energetic, but this one just feels like
this movie has a lot. Like you're saying, what you're saying is attitude. It has a lot of attitude. Yeah,
and it doesn't. It's almost like a not the cynical kind of attitude, but more of like a snarky-ish,
there you go, yeah.
smart alecky, snarky sort of behavior. It's kind of like what Adam Sandler tries to do in his movies, but Adam Sandler is just like much more. He's got into the more cynical, tired, depressing sort of attitude, whereas here it's just more like, yeah. I know that's not very descriptive, but yeah.
It's the best way to put it. I mean, can you really compare it to any like recent Marvel movie that we've seen?
I guess there were moments in Iron Man 2.
Two or three?
2 and 3, I'd say, that we're doing that. And I guess for some people that can be considered like inappropriate in some cases. But Ant-Man, it's like, it's very interesting that they would take Ant-Man into a more comedic direction. But yeah, sure, it's a guy who can shrink and turn small. It's really the concept itself is pretty out there to begin with. So let's not have fun. Why not have fun with this? And even as an action movie, it still feels really grounded, I want to say, where like the stakes are raised, the stakes are there.
I can see what you mean too, because I mean, we're dealing with like complex science, but something that's not like like not amazingly impossible or something like too crazy. It's just the power to shrink down. Of course, that sounds crazy too.
Yeah,
but it's not on such a high scale level. Yeah.
Let's see, and we have let's see, who was it that played Scott Lang? I forgot his name.
It was Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd, yeah, I remember him. He was in Anchorman, right?
Yeah, he's been in quite a
lot of stuff. Let's see, and I'm not sure. I'm not a big follower of Paul Rudd's career, but he's just like one of those actors where you've kind of been aware of him for some time, and I'd say he really surprised me as being like leading man material here.
Oh yeah, I
mean, he's got that natural charisma, and he's definitely capable of even producing the film's more dramatic moments.
Oh yeah, and he's totally a fun character, and like his sudden switch from like I don't want to do this, I really don't, to like, hey, well, now I got to do some really cool stuff. I'm gonna be a part of this, and if anything, I feel like he's just kind of along for the ride, and eventually it becomes something a little more than that. So there's some character development there.
Yeah, especially when he's like interacting with Hank Pym and his and his daughter, whose name what was the daughter's name? Hope Van Dyne, who is the daughter of Hank Pym and Janet, who was in this universe the Wasp. And I really he's kind of like treated as more of a tool per se, where Hank Pym does take him under his wing, but he's kind of like treats Scott Lang as like a means to an end, and Hope doesn't really have any hope for this character, but he really does prove himself. He's like, yes, I really want to do this. You can definitely tell this character has a very clear motivation that drives that you can tell that he has that drive that makes him want to better himself, makes him want to go out there and be not try to be tries to in a way free himself and try to he strives for that independence to prove that he can be the person that his daughter sees him to be.
Yeah. To be her hero.
To be her hero.
So
just under overwhelming odds, because I like that about this movie. It really sets up the character where it's like he doesn't have a stable job, he's got money issues, everyone doesn't think too highly of him. He's got
the underdog.
Yeah, he's the classic definition of the underdog, and that's what makes him very likable and relatable, I believe.
And at the same time, I think it's fair to say that with this movie, they don't really necessarily take a risk with the direction that it went, right? It wasn't really like a risky movie.
I guess the idea of an Ant-Man movie itself is risky.
Okay, premise. Well, I can, yeah. Well, what I mean by it, like the whole underdog story, though, you're playing it safe by making a simple underdog story. As in that kind of terms. But yeah, when you hear the words Ant-Man, I don't think the most regular people would want to go actively out and watch, hey, Ant-Man, that sounds fantastic. Let's go watch it.
Yeah. But luckily, they've been kind of clever with the marketing thing.
Oh, that movie was marketed a lot, wasn't it? Like it was everywhere.
I remember they before they came out with the teaser, it's like an Ant-Man sized teaser, so it's like a tiny little box. Like, haha, fuck you, Marvel. You think you're better than me, don't you?
Actually, one thing I want to ask you is, this is more to the story in the comics than about the movie itself, but why do you think they went for the second Ant-Man as opposed to the first?
That is very interesting because I think most people are more aware of Hank Pym and Janet, Ant-Man and Wasp, and I think people were really upset when they learned that Janet was already dead in this continuity at this point. Why would they want to go with Scott Lang as opposed to Hank Pym? I honestly have no idea.
My thoughts were because we kind of already have Iron Man, and he in this situation, he created Ultron. So to have I guess Hank Pym and Iron Man on the same doing the same things would be like
because Hank Pym was in the comics created Ultron.
Yeah.
So I guess they wanted an excuse to take him out of the picture in this continuity.
I think that's what they were going for. I don't know myself. Like I said, I'm not too familiar with comics, but
maybe they wanted to avoid another origin story. Well, technically, this is the origin of the Scott Lang Ant-Man, but they want to already have Ant-Man as an established, suit and powers and person who's simply passing it off to the next person. So it's a way of having an origin story, but not really an origin story.
Yeah, I like it. It's actually, I can't think, has there been a Marvel movie where a mantle was passed as an origin story?
Let's see, Iron Man, no. Thor, no. Captain America, no. No, not really, no. And there's never been passing of the torch. I mean, in the comics, certain characters have passed down their costumed lineage down to the next generation, but certainly not in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as of yet. So yeah, it is kind of a refreshing take, and maybe by having two generations of Ant-Man, it shows there's more history to this cinematic universe. I mean, we've had like Captain America and Tony Stark's dad, who's been, and Agent Carter, who's been doing all this stuff before the events of the first Marvel Cinematic movie.
Could that open up a sequel to Ant-Man that's actually a prequel with Hank Pym?
Possibly, but considering how, even though technically, like officially, Janet is dead, we never see her face, so I'm assuming that they're going to pick some big actress later down the line to play her, and technically she's not dead.
She's not dead
she's
until
not
you see
dead.
her.
Watch the movie if you haven't already, and you'll find out what we mean by that. Let's see. Hank Pym himself, played by, what was it, Michael Douglas? I liked him. I thought he was really great. Surprisingly, from what I understand, I think I've said that a couple times, but then again, I'm kind of like a casual comic fan where I've only read articles and such, and not actually going and reading it, the actual comics.
And me even to a lesser extent.
I mean, the only amount of Ant-Man and Wasp I've ever read were the first 24 issues of the original Marvel Avengers comics from the 60s. But from what I understand, in recent history, the comics have kind of portrayed Hank Pym as like an abusive spouse, and kind of like this big, like, crazy asshole.
Wow.
And I think they kind of hint at it in the movie, where Michael Douglas talks about him having this dark side and how he rejected his protege, Darren Cross, because he sees a bit of himself in him. But they don't really go into explanation about that. And they do hint at like a very troubled relationship between him and his daughter Hope. But again, they kind of I don't think maybe that wasn't, they weren't intending on introducing that abusive relationship sort of deal into this version of Hank Pym. But they do definitely show him as being this tortured soul who's been living with all this guilt for many years and kind of like a shell of a man. Yeah. And for that, I believe that they picked a really great, well-experienced actor for that.
What about the villain?
The villain is probably like the
one note,
the one thing I like the least, where he felt too derivative of Obadiah Stane, Jeff Bridges' character from the first Iron Man, where he's a big corporate villain, wants to use his technology to sell to the bad guys, and make money and, you know, yada, yada, yada. Evil corporate dude.
Throw in a little Hydra, mix it up a little bit, but not really. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And, which kind of ties into Captain America, the Winter Soldier. So I'm guessing Hydra is going to be this thing that's going to show up every now and then. So yeah, he wasn't breaking any new ground, really. The actor they got to him, he was pretty great, and I kind of glad they established him as the villain really early on when he shrunk that dude who didn't agree with him.
He shrunk him into giblets.
Yeah, into little pieces of jelly.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, no, there's no bones about it. He's the villain. But it's kind of like a problem that I've seen a lot in Marvel movies where the villains themselves aren't very memorable.
Who was it?
The dark elf played by Christopher Eccleston from Thor 2,
or
Thorin the Ronan.
That's
the Ronan the Accuser.
Yeah,
from Guardians of the Galaxy. There are not a lot of good villains in this series. We've had Ultron, we've had Loki, and Ultron in Daredevil we've had Kingpin. So I guess that's 3 so far out of how many movies? But I'm just going to say, I doubt there's going to be a lot of kids who are going to be wanting to dress as Yellow Jacket this Halloween.
Yeah, no.
Ant-Man, yeah, I'd see that.
Yeah.
So let's see, anything else? I
the
love
side characters.
The side characters, yeah, they were great. I loved Michael Pena as Luis. He was by far probably my favorite character in the movie, only because he's like that very goofy, lovable. Like he's a bit of an idiot, but he's like that lovable idiot. He's like in a charming sort of way.
No, but Andres, he's a stereotype, and he's hurting Mexican culture or Latino culture. How could you say that? How could you support this movie? It's so disgusting.
This thing. I remember I was talking about this on Facebook, and okay, so yeah, there have been some controversy. Some people have gotten offended over the portrayal of Luis, where, sure, okay, I will admit they do tend to use common tropes that's seen among Latino characters in film, where they either have like some criminal backstory, or and they tend to be played up for laughs. They're like the idiot sidekick, you know, who tend to play second banana to the white the white male lead actor. Who's kind of, so like the Latino would be there to make the main lead look good. So some of those tropes are used here, but I feel like they weren't used they weren't used in a way that would make anyone offended. At least I think not, because I feel like they treated him as a character before, as opposed to a stereotype. He felt very three-dimensional. I think the whole criminal aspect, it worked well in the context of this movie, given that Scott Lang, all his friends were Latino. Were Latino. They were all criminals. They were all criminals.
Are you saying that all Latinos are criminals in dress? Are you Donald Trump?
I'm just saying that in the context of this film and its story, it works. And it's not, I didn't notice it as being stereotypical for me personally, because I saw this character I saw Luis as a character first, a Latino second. Like, I did not pay attention to his ethnicity. I see him as a character, not as a minority, basically. And also, you know, he's a criminal, but the whole point of this movie the whole, you know, idea of this film are people trying to better themselves, people trying to get away from not get away, but people trying to reform, and
he does.
And what's the word? Redeem themselves. It's all about the theme of this film is redemption. And Luis, he kicked ass. Remember when he saved that guy from that exploding building? I love that.
He sighs and hesitates. It's like, oh, I gotta go do this.
It's like, hey man, so we're like the good guys this time? I gotta say, it feels weird. I also just love how he does this thing. He has this tendency to overthink and overcomplicate certain situations. Where I was like, you can tell you've had that friend in your mind every once in a while.
Yeah. Well put. I agree. He was a lot of fun. I think he was a lot of the people's favorites in the movies, and whenever he came up, a lot of people seemed to laugh and enjoy, his banter,
his antics.
Yeah.
And the funny thing, you know, we live in an area that's primarily made up of Latinos, and they all kind of relate to that guy. We all, everybody has like, oh yeah, I know that guy in my family. And funny enough, you know, I'd go on Facebook, and a lot of people were kind of said, yeah, I liked him. So if you have a problem with this, I'm sorry, you know, sucks for you. Me personally, I saw as a person of Mexican descent, I did not have any issue whatsoever with this character.
I completely agree. Other than that, is there anything else you want to mention? Any other person you want to mention?
Well, okay, I guess there is Hope, who was played by, what's her name, Evangeline Lilly. She was okay. Yeah, she is rather harmless role. I mean, she did what she had to do, but I guess she didn't really tend to leave enough of an impression on me. I mean, she was there. I feel like I was glad she was there to be more than just the love interest, but from the very get-go, I was like, okay,
there's the love interest.
There's the love interest. Hollywood movie, you gotta have those.
But like you said, and she was just okay.
Yeah,
and she's somewhat likable, but for the most part, I mean, there's not much that can be said about her. Just your standard female side, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
And finally, I guess we gotta talk about the special effects. I really love the
the train scene.
Thomas the Tank Engine. That was amazing. The fight scenes here, like the action sequences, are incredibly imaginative. They really take advantage of the idea that this is a guy who is small but has like a lot of power behind his attacks, and this really interesting how it takes me back to when I first saw the leaked footage of the concept trailer, sort of. There was like this. Before Ant-Man went into production, I believe Edgar Wright, he directed this short concept footage of Ant-Man sneaking into like this office and taking out two security guards as he walks down a hallway, and they kind of recreate that scene in this movie of him taking out these security dudes, jumping onto their guns, and then punching them in the face.
It's always great seeing him punch someone go from small to big, punch, speed, just all that crazy action.
Yeah, it's really funny. It's not funny. It's really amazing how they were able to take that small concept and expand on it, and really brought this character and his remarkable abilities to a whole new level.
Yeah, it really fleshes him out, and you really get a good understanding of what his abilities are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like, I definitely understand what he can do. I understand his limits.
Mm-hmm.
I understand,
And I gotta say, I never thought they would get me to care for ants, because personally, I hate ants.
I still do.
And the moment I see an ant, I'm like, ready to commit genocide on their race. Get my bottle of Windex and start spraying the hell out of them, as get the fuck out here.
Nobody wants you.
They got me to care about these ants, especially Anthony.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Anthony. Oh, poor little Anthony.
Poor Anthony. So that's a tremendous feat in and of itself. Anything else to talk about Ant-Man before we move on?
No, I think everything we want to say has been said.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, really.
So, what would be your final thoughts and rating?
Final thoughts is it was a good movie. I'd definitely I'd recommend people to go watch it, and I'd probably watch it again. It's been some time since I watched it. Actually, I do feel like watching it again for a second time to really get a good feeling for it. So for now, as of right now, without watching it again, I'd give it like 3.5 myself.
Okay.
It was fun, but it was very contained. It was very and that I think at the same time that's what they were going for. This isn't supposed to be a big blowout movie, because we had our big blowout. It was Avengers.
Yeah. This is a much more personal story. Not as personal as, say, the Daredevil show, because that's like super personal, very super down to earth to like an urban level, but this is like still kind of in the middle, in between like urban crime drama story and big budget, flying zippity zappity doo superhero movie.
So for me, I'd say from a 3.5 to a 4. Again, I have to rewatch this movie to really give it a fair assessment. It's been a while. But that'd be what I'd say.
I would say that the narrative was strong, the acting was strong, characters were very likable, they were memorable and funny. The comedy really worked in this movie, and despite my qualms with the villain and how it's sort of a been there, done that, I don't think that was really the main focus of the movie. And overall, its main focus was more on the main protagonist himself, and the antagonist there was kind of like a means to an end. Like, he was just there to help progress this character. And in the end, it was funny, it was action-packed, it was emotional in some cases, and it was inventive. And that's, you know, what I want to see in a Marvel superhero movie, especially in a movie like Ant-Man. I really had no expectations going in. Okay, I did have some expectations because this is a Marvel Studios movie, but for an Ant-Man, for a person who is not a Ant-Man fan, or like who doesn't really have any investment in this character to begin with, I was thoroughly entertained and exceeded my expectations. So I would probably say this is definitely a movie that I would like to own, so I would give it a 4 out of 5.
Gotcha. All right.
So yeah, moving on, we have the Adam Sandler comedy.
Oh boy.
Oh boy, we're going on the opposite end of the entertainment spectrum. We have Pixels, which was this big action comedy. I believe it was trying to be a family film, but it really wasn't. But basically, this was a movie that was based on a short film. The short film was
Extremely
also called...
short, like 3 minutes long, was it?
Yeah, it was like just 3D pixelated 3D versions of these pixelated arcade characters going around destroying cities and turning everything into also pixels as well. And I guess Hollywood said, hey, let's take that and turn it into a movie, and then let's fuck it up by making it a Happy Madison's production. Now, going into this movie, I was trying to defend this movie where it's like, okay, I know Adam Sandler and his cronies are here in this movie, but however, there is a difference between an Adam Sandler movie and a movie that features Adam Sandler.
Mm-hmm.
Case in point, Hotel Transylvania. Great movie. Really entertaining. And it has Adam Sandler and Kevin James and what's his name? Dave Spader? No.
I think you're talking about the right guy, David Spader.
David Spader, yeah. I think I may be wrong, but that may be another actor, but hopefully you guys know who I'm talking about. Yeah, basically Adam Sandler, he has a lot of his friends here in this movie where Adam Sandler plays this guy who, as a kid, he and his friends used to love playing arcade games, and he lost this arcade competition, and ever since then he's kind of been like this loser, kind of working at this sort of but not really Geek Squad sort of cable installer dude.
Because he lost the arcade game.
I don't know how losing an arcade game makes you lose all confidence in yourself, but okay. Even it was second place in that competition. How can you be second place and still feel bad about yourself? I don't know. But anyways, that competition, all the footage recorded in that competition was used to put into a rocket that was sent to outer space so that aliens may know about our culture. However, they saw our game footage as like a declaration of war.
How is it that out of all the things there, that's the only thing they decided to focus on? I'm just going to nitpick every little thing. But how is it that out of all the things we sent in that shuttle,
yeah,
that's the only thing we're going to focus on in this alien invasion?
Imagine if they put like 80s cartoons and then they start sending like Optimus Prime and He-Man after us.
Yeah, no. I don't know.
So they decide to recreate characters from our arcade video games and send them to attack us, like Galaga and Centipede and Pac-Man. So what was it? So Adam Sandler's character, whose name I don't even care.
Yeah, exactly.
Who gives a shit of what they're called? He
is friends with the president.
his chubby best friend ended up becoming who was played by Kevin James, ended up becoming the president of the United States. So Kevin James is like, hey, I know some arcade dudes who can help us. Adam Sandler, we need your help. You know what? The premise alone is really goofy and silly, but I could get behind it.
Yeah, it's fine if it's gonna be silly. A
bunch of dudes, getting together and doing something that they love, getting the rare chance to do what they love and go save the world. I could get behind a silly project like that. This kind of sounds like the kind of thing that maybe my friends and I would come up with. Where it's like a silly idea, but it's like, hey, it's so silly.
Let's like Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I guess so. It's like Ghostbusters with video games. It's like, hey, let's just. It's silly, but let's go for it.
Yeah.
Execution-wise, however, horribly wrong. I don't even know where to start with this movie. Okay, let's just start with Adam Sandler himself. I've noticed that a lot of the recent Adam Sandler movies, he tends to portray himself as like being a lot better off than a lot of the other characters in the film. He tends to put other people down. Everyone stares like he tends to be the straight man of the group, and he comes across as like a lot more cynical, a lot more snarky. There are times where I do laugh at Adam Sandler's jokes, but it's kind of like a lot the same thing with The Lone Ranger, where remember how we complained about how Johnny Depp is just mugging at the camera, but it was entertaining to a degree, but the fact that we've seen that sort of material beforehand in other movies. Same thing with Adam Sandler movies. I kind of found a bit of his dialogue entertaining or funny, stuff that made me laugh, but again, it's like he's playing the same character as in all his other movies, where he's playing
just being Adam Sandler.
Yeah, Adam Sandler. At least he doesn't do the voice where he's like, "Hey guys, I can defeat Pac-Man."
How about that spontaneous romance?
Oh, that romance where apparently there's someone that this woman who works for the White House, and Adam Sandler just so happens to meet her as he's trying to install her cable, and she's like got out of a bad relationship, and so Adam Sandler's trying to comfort her, and then he immediately tries to kiss her, and he's like, "I just met you," and he's like, "Oh, you're just a snob. If I was a rich guy, you would totally kiss me." I'm like, "No, it's because you just met her.
Yeah,
you do not take advantage of a woman and then try to comfort her and then try to have your way with her."
It just comes off completely wrong.
It's like the movie's trying to make her out to be the villain, but really he's just being an immature ass.
And at the same time, that's part of the joke, obviously. And
but we're supposed to side with this guy.
I don't know what to tell you there.
And then like Kevin James, he's the president. I don't have as big of a problem with him as a president. I just gotta say, this is a movie where Galaga is invading America, so I don't know. I feel Kevin James as president kind of like mixes in with this movie. He doesn't have a lot to do really, but yeah, I'd say I wasn't as bothered. I mean, sure, it is impossible for someone like Kevin James' character to become president, but it's like there's so much more wrong with this movie. There was Peter Dinklage. Peter Dinklage is a great actor, from what I hear and from what I've seen in previous films.
What was he doing in this movie? What happened? Oh, no way! Oh God! Just like what was that accent?
I don't know. He's trying to be super cool dude, bro. You know.
God!
And remember when he was talking to like the supposed creator of Pac-Man? He's like, "I made your game my bitch." I gotta say, I just love the amount of dedication he puts to this character. I mean, it's like, this character was so ridiculous beyond belief. I was like, okay, I gotta give props to him for, like, making something this ridiculous. And worst of all, there's Josh Gad. Josh Gad...
Oh, God, he's so annoying.
90% of his dialogue is just screaming. Apparently, in Adam Sandler's world, or in a Happy Madison production, screaming is like comedy gold.
It's perfectly
where it's like, this is the greatest day of my life!
It's perfectly acceptable dialogue.
Remember the scene where he's trying to be intimidating in front of like he's trying to motivate and intimidate a group of like army dudes as they are preparing to train them to be good arcade players, and he just goes on like a 2-minute tirade calling them sissies or girls or whatever, and it's not funny at all. And this guy has his obsession with this fictional female video game character. And this leads to some of the most cringeworthy moments, which we'll get into later, but...
So dumb.
It is beyond insultingly dumb.
Let's talk about the best part of the movie.
Okay.
And that being the animations themselves are like...
Yeah, the special effects are great, the action set pieces were great. I love that they used the sound effects, trying to recreate the situations for the arcade games. So special effects wise are probably the only really decent thing about this movie, and that one scene where there's like a full-on assault on the city, recreating that moment from the short film. Again, very imaginative, very creative. I just wish that
very pretty too, very
pretty, yeah. Very colorful. It just makes me wish that this movie was not put in the hands of a Happy Madison production.
No,
why would the studio go for someone like Adam Sandler to produce a family sort of action comedy.
Do you remember the message I sent you when I found out that it was being, an Adam Sandler production? Like, I was...
Yeah.
Oh, God, I was so... Like, I never...
You're a bigger gamer than me.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure how big you are into, like, the retro... I know you were a pretty big retro gamer.
Not that far, to be honest. That's not my sector of gaming, but still, I have respect for it, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
So, of course, with some of the games, or some of the scenes in the movie, the way they go about, beating the games don't necessarily correspond with the actual game itself. I mean, there's some things here and there.
Yeah. It's really weird. Like, I feel like the most important part about a movie is being able to convince the audience to buy its bullshit. And for a movie like Pixels, you really need to set up some, like, ground rules as to how this universe is, and how these video game characters are supposed to work. This movie breaks its own rules, breaks its own logic so many times in the movie. You mentioned before, they don't really follow the the respective games. During the centipede section, they're supposed to prevent the centipedes from landing, right?
I believe so.
And the centipedes are supposedly after the human characters. Yet once one centipede hits the ground, it starts going off on its own rampage into a hotel. I'm like, when's that part of the game? And
at the same time, again, it's kind of a nitpick, but in that sense, it's to make it a little more cinematic. It's to give you a little more experience. I mean, you can only go so far with the original, game rules to an extent.
But they plainly state that they have to beat the characters by the rules of the game.
Okay, that is okay. Then there you go.
They're breaking its own rule. The movie's breaking its own rules. Again, another moment with Pac-Man. Peter Dinklage's character, he inserts a cheat code somehow in his little car. First off, he's playing as a ghost. You're supposed to play as Pac-Man. How is a magical cheat code that you would normally place on Pac-Man work if you're the ghost? In a car. You're driving a car. How do you even insert cheat codes? I don't think there are even cheat codes in Pac-Man.
I wouldn't know myself.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I can get Billy Mitchell on the phone.
There you go. Speaking of... is Peter Dinklage supposed to be playing a small version of...
Officially, the producers have said he's not supposed to be Billy Mitchell, a parody, but yeah, the hair, the attitude, it's totally Peter Dinklage. I mean, he's totally playing Billy Mitchell.
Yeah, he's channeling some aspects of him, but going back to that cheating thing, I just love how big of a deal how much this character has to cheat. And he's so bad at cheating that he has it written on his glass.
Yeah, supposedly, as a kid, during, back in the 80s when he was going up against Adam Sandler as a kid, toe-to-toe in a game of, was it Donkey Kong?
Yes.
And apparently he did cheat codes in Donkey Kong by putting the cheat codes in his glasses as opposed to memorizing them like, a smart dude would do.
And again, it's a nitpick. Or what we're saying is,
but in the movie there are so many tiny little nitpicks that becomes a problem.
Exactly.
Another one, I've talked about this before. The fictional female video game character, she's the only one who is human as opposed to being pixels. Why? Fuck you. That's why. And the Josh Gad somehow convinces her to be good. And basically, she's treated. Do they treat her as a character? Do they treat her as like a person? No, she's kind of like a glorified trophy of Josh Gad's character, obsessive, character. It was like, I want you, she's mine, I have to have her.
And we have that whole hey, you guys cheated, we're gonna destroy your world. And then that whole destroying your world is just like another level of the game, but it's...
Oh yeah, another thing. Donkey Kong, the way they beat Donkey Kong, that's not how you're supposed to beat him in the game.
No.
And also, I thought that they were going to use all 4 levels of Donkey Kong. No, it's just the first level, because it's iconic, I guess. Even though, when they were playing Centipede, they're like, okay, we're going to play the next level. This is the next level now. It's going to get harder.
Oh, do you love how they
don't do that with Donkey Kong?
Do you love how the characters just pick up a gun that they've never handled before and just straight up know how to use it?
Yeah, because they're gamer, they're great arcade gamers. Suddenly, that gives them the ability to have precise, precision when shooting a gun at actual centipedes in real life. I'm like, pushing buttons is not really the same thing. I mean, sure, you can detect, as Adam Sandler's character says, you can detect the patterns, but that doesn't translate to being able to wield a gun. And
it's funny because the whole, patterns thing, it also breaks that. It's like, don't think about the patterns, just try to live. You remember that scene?
Yeah. I guess we're trying to do a correlate to try to bridge create some sort of correlation between older games and modern games, especially when they bring up Call of Duty a lot, where it's like the old generation is trying to teach the new generation how games were back in their day. Okay, kind of cute, I suppose, but that whole like, trying to detect a formula and the whole try to play as if you're gonna live sort of deal. I guess that they're trying to play to the fact that more games are about immersion now as opposed to skill, I guess. I'm not really sure. I don't know. What do you think?
It depends. I mean,
I'm not really sure where they were trying to go there.
It's kind of a knock against like newer games. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I think new games nowadays, they have their fair challenges too, and there's games specifically tailor-made for people looking for those challenges in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But for I don't know. It's hard to say really. It just leads to a bigger argument of like, hey, retro games, newer games. What's more challenging? What challenges you more? What do you enjoy? It's just stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I want to ask you, is this movie as bad as everyone says it is? Is it a terrible movie?
I'd say it's definitely a bad movie. I didn't think it was a terrible movie. However, as the week started passing, I started disliking the movie more and more, to where looking back on the movie, the few moments that I laughed weren't enough for me to say, yeah, definitely go see this movie if you're into video games.
And I agree, by all means, I wouldn't say that either. Mm-hmm. But I've heard like a lot like that it's a terrible movie. And I can agree that it's a bad movie, but terrible.
This is supposed to be a comedy that's not funny. It's an action movie where the rules don't make any sense. The only thing it's really got going for it are its pretty special effects, but I don't think, special effects alone cannot carry a whole movie. I mean, we've seen what happened to the Star Wars prequels when they try to do that.
Yeah.
So I think this is a movie that really fails on all fronts. And the breaking point for me that would make me go even further is what they did to Q*bert.
I was wondering if you were going to mention that.
We had to that was the moment.
That was the moment where we were like,
fuck this movie.
Fuck it, we're done. We're done.
We're done professionally, you and me, Sandler. Okay, we're gonna spoil this. Okay, this movie. I know this review is gonna come out like a good month or after Pixels. So yeah, let's talk about it. So, Q*bert. Apparently, when you beat a game, when humans beat the aliens or the aliens beat the humans, they get a trophy. And a trophy is like one of their own. So whenever the aliens win, they abduct a human, and when the people win, they get a video game character. So when they beat Centipede, the Duck Hunt dog shows up out of nowhere in an old lady's hotel apartment,
which we never see again.
Never see again. You'd think that they would show up like in front of the main characters, but no. And then when they beat Pac-Man, they get Q*bert. And for whatever reason, he is every single 80s annoying, high-pitched sidekick. I kept thinking to myself, why does he sound like Snarf from Thundercats? Snarf, I don't think it's a good idea. Okay, so his voice is annoying as hell. He does absolutely nothing but bounce around and go, wee, look at me, look how funny I am, buy my toys. And so yeah, he contributes nothing to the movie. Also, why from what I understand, the aliens created these video game characters to be tools. They don't seem to have any real sentience. Yet Q*bert is a fully, conscious being. So that raises a lot of ethical questions as to, what exactly are these pixel creatures?
Yeah.
So yeah, he does absolutely nothing in the movie. And then the most fucked up thing that happens to him is that I guess once they beat the aliens, they get one more trophy. But unlike the Duck Hunt dog and Hubert, who were like separate characters, but when they beat the aliens, Hubert becomes the third trophy. He's forced against his... They point this out in the movie. He's forced against his will to turn into the female video game character that Josh Gad immediately makes out with. Even Sandler himself points out, dude, that was Hubert.
It's so wrong on so many levels. It's... Yeah, no, that was the big fuck you moment of the movie. Absolutely.
Which makes me think, like...
Just for no fucking reason, I am now a woman. Hear me...
Not hear me roar, hear me submit to this lowly human.
I know, right? Oh, God.
Which makes... this is another recurring trend I've seen in Adam Sandler movies, where they try to play a lot of, like, 80s nostalgia. And for this movie to try to be, like, a family film of some kind... Like, a lot of these references are not... Like, you can tell Hubert was really... You look at something like Hubert, that was easily meant to appeal towards little kids watching the movie. Mm-hmm. Yet, all these references like Hall & Oates, or Madonna, or Fantasy Island, Ricardo Montalban, Tattoo... none of these... No one's gonna understand these references!
Yeah, I completely agree.
And the thing is, like, of course, the video games are part of this whole 80s nostalgia sort of deal. And I'm thinking to myself, with the treatment, how they treated Q*bert and all these breaking of the rules with, Pac-Man and stuff, I'm starting to think that if, like, Adam Sandler and his crew really did not care about the whole video game aspect of the film, where it's like, oh, hey, 80s nostalgia, that we're doing this 80s nostalgia thing. Again, just now with a video game, paint. What do you call it?
Fresh coat of paint.
Yeah, with a video game themed fresh coat of paint. It really feels like there was no. I don't know. I feel like there was a lack of passion in this film, and it was just like, hey, we're just here to do a fun little action movie and just have our own brand of humor that no one's gonna find funny.
Well, some people find it funny, apparently.
I guess so, but overall, this was just a chore to sit through.
Oh, yeah.
Any little merit that this movie had, it squandered with the lack of fucks given to this movie's production.
Honestly, it's just a waste of potential.
Yeah, that's the saddest thing.
Yeah.
You could have had something great with this movie. You could have had something like Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, where it's like, again, this silly thing just made awesome with the right amount of spirit and talent.
And care.
And fucks given.
And respect. I mean, these characters are losers. Every single one of them is a goddamn loser. It's like, I'm supposed to like these guys? It plays to the stereotype that all gamers are, or at least back then, all those gamers were nerds and became nothing.
And loser. And there's like, yeah, we're gonna, the nerds are in charge. And oh yeah, that was another thing. They kind of brought up some subplot where, like, the military general dude did not like the idea that the nerds were kind of taking over, but that goes nowhere.
I forgot about that, actually. You're so right.
Oh, boy. 1 out of 5 for me. The more we talk about this, the more it confirms my thoughts that this is absolute shit.
1.5. Only, that extra 0.5 is only because... my heart goes out to animation and all that stuff, because I loved seeing it. It was great to see it. Just Donkey Kong and just all the even like Duck Hunt. It was just so funny to see just Duck Hunt appear.
Paperboy.
Yeah.
Mario appeared.
Did he appear for a second?
Yeah, he appeared for a second. It was Donkey Kong Mario.
Okay, Jumpman.
Jumpman. Yeah. Really funny how Nintendo has refused to get their characters involved in any sort of media ever since the debacle of that was the Super Mario Brothers movie. And they chose this movie to feature Duck Hunt and Donkey Kong and Mario.
I don't know how much they had to pay for the rights to use it. I wonder if they're even going to try to make any merchandise out of Pixels.
I don't know, because I think this movie may not be doing very well box office wise, I think.
I don't know.
I don't know who knows, but yeah, it's just a sad thing that would happen. And you know what? I thought that it wasn't going to get worse than Pixels, but somehow it did.
It did, because the next movie we watched didn't have that, those those endearing animations.
It had quite the opposite. It had pretty bad animation, bad special effects, bad acting, bad script, bad directing. Just overall was so. Oh dear God! The movie we're talking about obviously is Fant4stic, and I'm going to stick to that name just to help differentiate between that and a movie that's not even, that barely turned 10 years old, I believe.
Yeah, I can't. Ever since I saw the way they wrote it out, that was my go-to name, Fant4stic.
It didn't work with Scriform, and it certainly didn't work here. Stop, Hollywood, stop replacing the A with the number 4. They don't look alike.
Do we care about the actors' names in this case?
I do care about one actor in particular, and that was Michael B. Jordan. He's going to show up in the upcoming Rocky spinoff, Creed, and he seems to be the best actor in this movie.
Because he has energy and charisma.
Yeah, that is exactly true. That's kind of like almost what I said when we got out of the theater, where it's like, this guy was trying to give a fuck. Whereas everyone else had the most cringeworthy dialogue, and it felt like they were kind of phoning it in. Especially the dialogue between Miles Teller as Reed Richards and Kate Mara as Sue Storm was so bad. I was just face palming all the time. I was like, oh my God.
So forced.
People were it was so forced. People were paid to write this shit. A man was paid to write this shit. And the thing is, when I'm watching this movie, when you're watching a movie, obviously everything in a movie is fake. Everything is actors and special effects and, scripts and directors. However, it's the filmmaker's job to make you feel like these characters are real enough for you to feel invested in these characters.
And actually care about them.
And actually care about them. I did not care about them. I did not feel invested in them. I did not have any sympathy for them. Well, except for one instance that I'll get into. I feel like I was not watching characters in a film. I feel like I was watching actors pretending to be characters. And that's the thing, it's like, it fails to get me sucked into this movie.
So at that point, why should you even care?
Right.
Well, let's talk about the story. The actors were bad. So, let's get into the story.
Okay, story. So, as a little kid, Reed Richards, he builds a teleporter, and he befriends Ben Grimm, who is like the one guy who does not make fun of him. That's the thing. The teacher in this classroom, they all make fun of him for trying to do the impossible. I was like, wow, way to be a dick.
Yeah.
This is like middle school. It's like, what's your dream? I want to do something that no one has ever done before.
Well, no, slap. Down, boy.
And so the Reed Richards and Ben, they become friends. Sort of, but not really, because there's no real progression of their friendship. And
no, because there's just a time skip, like to 7 years later. Yeah,
7 years later, they're at a science fair. It is the stupidest scene I've seen in the movie, where you saw my reaction, where it's like Ben and Reed, they show off their now finished teleportation device, and they use it to successfully make a model plane disappear and reappear. And what does the asshole teacher from middle school says? Oh, this is a science fair project, not a magic show.
You're getting an F.
You're disqualified. You just saw a fucking model plane disappear before your very eyes with the whole blue electricity sciencey thing. You saw it work.
And shatter the backboard of a basketball hoop.
You just saw something that just, could revolutionize the world of science, and no
fucks were given.
No fucks are given. Again, somebody wrote this. and so
you could say that maybe they didn't understand, maybe they didn't see, but I mean, you could still
if I saw a teleportation device, I'd be like, holy shit, that's a teleportation device.
that is fucking amazing.
Cool. So you saw my reaction. I was like, "What the fuck? this
this is huge. This could change this. Well, why aren't we funding this?
Apparently, it does get funded because Reed Richards' project is noticed by what's his name? It was basically Sue Storm and Johnny Storm's father, who is the head of this big think tank project where they hire a lot. It's like a school for super smart children, for super smart people, and they've been collecting people to get together to make a full-sized working version of this teleportation device. So yada yada yada. They spend time on this thing, and then these characters who are pretending to be the Fantastic Four that we know and love try to use the teleportation device. Things go awry, and so they get powers. One of them gets left behind. He becomes something that's supposed to resemble Doctor Doom, but doesn't in any real way whatsoever. The characters, they get powers, they do jack shit for an hour, and then
they just live in a base.
They're forced by the government to get stuck in a military base. And the Thing, Ben Grimm as the Thing, does missions for them.
So alright, so these are the action scenes. We see the Thing on TV doing some military shit.
You don't even see them. Like the shots that you see in the trailer of him like landing off from that from that plane that air carrier thing, plane, whatever you call it. Not in the movie.
And if it was, I honestly don't think it was, but if it was, it probably just played on another, like, tiny TV screen we just didn't see. Yeah. Because that's the only time we ever saw him in action. We saw, God. Was that, a headbutt? We saw some training.
Johnny Storm, like, shooting down a badly animated, drone.
Yeah, and like I said, and one headbutt. That was it. Until the last 15 minutes of the movie. That's all the action you're gonna get.
There's the movie doesn't pick up until like the last 14 minutes of the movie, at which point they're like, oh wait, this is a Fantastic Four movie. Let's actually have them actually act like the Fantastic Four. So out of nowhere, Reed Richards suddenly has the qualities of a combat leader. He suddenly turns to Captain America, is like, all right, team, let's do this and that and this and that. And they beat Doctor Doom, who is introduced, again, the last 14 minutes of the movie. The movie forgets that he even exists.
Oh my god.
And so they're like, oh, hey, hey guys, how's it going? I know it's been a year, but guess what? I'm evil now. I'm gonna start using my Dr. Manhattan powers to blow up the world because fuck you all. And so they beat them. And, like, it's what we've been waiting. I didn't even know that 2 hours had gone by.
I know. You pointed that out. And I'm like, yeah, 2 hours. Oh, yeah. And then that's when you point out, there can only be, like, 15 or 30 minutes left in the movie. And I'm like,
no. It felt like the movie took so long to do anything that it felt like I was still stuck in the middle of the second act. Maybe at the beginning of the second act, beginning of the second act, because, like, they don't do anything other than complain and whine and like, oh, Reed Richards, we hate you for leaving the military base, even though you're doing exactly what any of us would have done in your case.
And you're researching on your own to help us still, but we're
going to ignore that.
We don't care about that. How about when they actually make it to the other dimension, right? That's a safe word. They do some of the stupidest shit I've ever seen in any fucking movie.
Gee, look at this glowing green goop. I'm going to touch it.
I'm gonna stick my hand right in it. Or how about,
the ground cracked simply by placing a flagpole into the ground.
And you can see like green just seeping out. Oh,
the ground is not stable. Let's walk over it.
Let's rappel down over a little mountainside.
Let's go over a mountainside, despite the fact that we're supposedly drunk. They were drunk when it was like, yeah, Lou, you know what we're so happy. You know what? Fuck those astronauts at NASA. Let's do it ourselves. Woo! And then I guess that intoxication just goes away when you travel through dimensions.
I don't know what to say. Honestly, that was probably one of my least favorites. And stuff. It's one of my least favorite scenes with stuff actually happening, and it's sad because it's one of the only places where stuff actually happens.
That's relevant to the plot, at least. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Ben Grimm and all this. he does nothing before he becomes the Thing. What I mean by that is that in the comics, I believe, like, he's supposed to be a really good friend of Reed Richards, where even I think in some incarnations, Ben Grimm is kind of like the muscle who kind of protected Reed from bullies and whatnot. And here you can see like Reed Richards towering over Ben Grimm, which feels so wrong. And Ben Grimm, they don't really establish a friendship at all whatsoever. I mean, they do say, "Oh, he's my best friend," but they don't show them acting as best friends. Ben Grimm just feels like more like a lab assistant that just follows Reed around wherever he goes. But I will give them credit. The one thing I felt like that was done well with this movie was that once they get their powers, the movie kind of suddenly shifts in tone, and kind of seems like it treats itself like a horror movie, where it's like, look at how fucked up it is to have these powers, and it is effective, but they don't go anywhere with it. 1 year later, everyone's already used to their powers. Yep. I'm like, wait, huh? What?
What happened? What are the ramifications of this? Nothing. Absolutely not a goddamn thing.
And then, of course, I know we're bouncing all over the place, but it's like there's just a million things to talk about. The military, they're forcing them into the military base. The government is forcing them into the military base against their will to use them as super soldiers, because we haven't seen that shit before.
God. Or how about? Hey, I'm sorry, I want to talk about the ending. How about the ending where they're like, "Hey, we don't want to work with the government anymore." All right, well, how far from the government do you want to work or do you want to work with? Far away. And then they end up working in a secret government-owned building, still technically working for the government, and you're
another thing, they do that thing I hate in superhero movies where they try to avoid using the superhero title, or it's like
I called it too. It's like 1, 2, title.
It's like, this is pretty fantastic. What did you say? Fantastic. That's it. That's our name. We're... And then the title.
Their title.
Fant4stic. That's where we are, the Fant4stic. At this point, I don't think we really need to talk about the costumes themselves and how dull and boring and you know what? The costumes themselves are kind of like a reflection of the movie itself. It's dull. It's derivative of other, sort of dark and gritty looking costumes. It's devoid of all color, any sense of wonder.
And someone does not wear pants.
The Thing. It's like, it was funny, like, you see, I mentioned before after we got out of the theater, where the Thing, he's all depressed that he has to do these missions for the government. I was expecting him to tell Reed, and the worst part of all, they didn't have the courtesy to give me a pair of pants. Sad thing is sad.
I don't know why it bothered me so much, but
it's just weird. Why do you not give him pants? Why would the government not issue him some, like, custom-made jeans or whatnot? At least some stretchy pants, what do you call them, sweatpants? I don't know. But you think, I know he's a rock monster, but you think as a human you would feel uncomfortable?
Sympathy, yes. Yeah, well, yeah, that too, but I did feel uncomfortable. I kept staring at his crotch where I felt something should be. I'm like, oh god, oh god, oh god.
Why do I want there, like, oh god, why does he have a penis? Why am I concerned that he doesn't have a penis?
Yes, exactly.
And man, I bet you, like, the Thing is like, hey, who needs a penis when you've got rock hard abs like mine? Literal rock hard abs.
Oh, man. Anything else you want to say about this,
let's see. Oh, yeah, okay, we already mentioned that. Everyone hated Reed Richards for escaping, despite the fact that that's like the common sense sort of thing to do. The father of Reed and Sue, the father of Johnny and Sue, didn't it feel like they were trying to copy Alfred's dialogue from the Dark Knight trilogy, where Alfred would tend to go on these tangents and speeches, except here every single line of dialogue was nothing but a speech or something out of a Chinese fortune cookie.
I could see that, and at a certain point, his gravelly voice eventually started to bother me. I don't know about you, but there'd be times where his voice would be a little more clear, and then all of a sudden he'd be all very gravelly. It just
It seemed like, I don't know, his voice kind of had a bit of an ADR quality to it, where it looked like it was recorded somewhere and then messed with it. Where, like, his voice felt a lot, maybe because his voice is deep, naturally deep, that the bass to his voice is a lot louder than other people, so it kind of sounds unnatural. I'm not sure what to make of that.
honestly, if it was any earlier, we'd probably be able to make a little more sense, make this a little more organized. But I have no words, nothing else to really say about this movie. I mean, it's bad. It's really bad. You know what? There is what I think that can be said. Mm-hmm. The whole drama behind the movie.
That is the director's meltdown and his drama, behind the scenes drama, is a lot more interesting than the movie itself. Where we've been trying to keep up with the news, and sort of like he blames the studio for meddling with it with his project, and then the studio was blaming him for his destructive behavior, coming to set late, either drunk or high, and then destroying his rental house that he was staying at for the time, causing hundreds of thousands of dollars. He was apparently very hostile towards the cast and crew, and however he acted, you can tell that from the acting alone that they had no direction. They had nothing to work with outside the script itself. The characters were so monotone, so boring. It's like they weren't told what to do or how to do their jobs as actors, because it doesn't seem to be a functioning director there to do his job. I kind of feel sorry for this guy. He's like, he came out of a successful movie like Chronicle. He was attached to Fant4stic. He was almost going to do a Star Wars movie. It looked like he was on top of the world. And then, for whatever reason, this guy just couldn't handle the pressure, I guess, of a big blockbuster studio film, and kind of he reached his breaking point. And now with that one tweet he recently made, the night that Fant4stic 4 came out, it seemed like he was kind of like, by exposing the turmoil between him and the studio, it seemed like he's kind of burning any major studio bridge he had.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, it was obviously his PR department that had him to immediately take that down. It wasn't his own action. That was his PR team forcing him to take that down. I don't know what he has in his future at this point now.
Mm-hmm. The man's fairly young. I think he's like, 31 years old, I think?
I'm not too sure. But, I don't know, do you think he'll be able to direct something this big again?
Probably not. I mean, this is a guy who is simply not ready to deal with a big studio movie, where he went from a project that he was in total control of to a project that he had almost no control with. I've seen that this become a trend where, the big studios tend to pick fresh talent to work on their big budget movies. Case in point, Gareth Edwards from Godzilla. And look at what he's doing. He's also, after doing a successful movie, he made Monsters, which I believe was kind of got him a lot of attention, and then was attached to Godzilla, and now he's doing Star Wars Rogue One. So that's someone who appears to have handled everything. Who knows? Maybe this is a situation where it's like everyone's to blame and no one's to blame. Or maybe it's like a thing where it's like everybody was in the wrong.
It just sounds like a he said, she said.
Yeah, sort of. But it could be like that. Both Fox and Josh Trank were simply unable to properly do their job. So overall, Fant4stic 4.
Don't watch it. Don't waste your time.
You see, there are movies that are so hilariously bad, you have to see them. Then there are movies that are so infuriatingly bad that they'll most likely stick with you because of how, shocking they are. Case in point, Pixels. And then there's this kind of garbage. It's the kind of bad that's truly unspectacular, boring, lifeless, and dull, to a point where it will leave no impact on you if you go see this movie. In fact, you will most likely forget you even saw this movie a week from now.
Yeah, no.
This movie, it's the type of bad that I have not seen in a while now. A movie that's so painfully boring that it leaves you with nothing. Pixels left me with rage, at least. Something like The Room left me with laughter and joy. This leaves me with nothing. And that's probably a worse thing. It's worse. There's memorably bad, and then there's like forgettably bad. I think forgettably bad is the worst kind of bad you can possibly be. To be able to go into a movie expecting to be entertained, and not only not be entertained, but be left with absolutely nothing. No type of nothing to get to get out of that movie. Like whenever you come out of a movie, you expect to, you know, there are movies that make you laugh, movies that make you think, movies that make you cry, movies that make you sit on the edge of your seat. This is a movie that does none of that. And I feel like that's the worst thing you can possibly do, especially for a movie about, we didn't even talk about how unfaithful this is, really, how much of a mockery this is to the Fantastic Four, the first like characters that major characters that Stan Lee made when he was working for Marvel. He didn't even show up for a cameo in this movie.
That bad. This is.
You know you fucked up when you're making me reminisce about the 2005 and 2007 Fantastic Four movies, which Stan Lee actually made cameos in. There's so much I could say about this movie, but overall, it's shit. And it's incredible. Again, just like Pixels, but on a more worse degree, because this is the Fantastic Four. It squanders any potential that this movie may have had. It's like it's a reboot. We had Ant-Man this year, and last year we had Guardians of the Galaxy. Those were able to take their wacky concepts and make them work. You want a good Fantastic Four movie? Watch The Incredibles. That did the Fantastic Four was more faithful to the Fantastic Four so much better than this. I mean, we didn't even talk about like how uninspired they portrayed Reed Richards' stretching ability. And you're like, oh, what does he do with his powers? Dodges bullets and punch people. That's the extent of his stretch powers. And take that and compare that to Elastigirl, aka Mrs. Incredible's use of her stretchy powers.
Well, keep in mind, I think that what is it called, like Devil's Advocate. I don't think you can put something that comes in animation into real life and make it look good. Like some of Elastigirl's abilities, you know, it's animation versus reality. You know,
that is true, but
I get what
it was unimaginative how they portrayed his powers. But bottom line, it's a complete disappointment of a film.
Are you surprised?
I guess I am surprised. I was expecting this movie to be bad going into it, because we were like, let's just see it for the sake of reviewing it. And, just to fulfill our own curiosity. I didn't expect it to be this horribly bad. I mean, when we saw Pixels, like, it's probably not that bad. And like, yeah, there is some stuff to enjoy from it, but we didn't see it as like a complete train wreck until
the end.
Until the end. This one was just painful from beginning to end. And of course, there's no other rating worthy. This movie's not worthy of any rating higher than a 1 out of 5.
Just don't watch it. Don't support, this movie. As simple as that. Unless you really want to fulfill your own curiosity, then
unless you are a diehard Fantastic Four person. I mean, personally, I'm not that big of a Fantastic Four person. I like the Fantastic Four. I would love to see a Fantastic Four movie done right. I'm just ashamed that I didn't see it here.
No, we guess you'll have to wait. Let's see. How many more years?
I think they have to make a movie every 10 years or so. I don't know.
All right,
in order for Fox to keep the rights, but I doubt they'll want to try after this.
Expect a reboot or the rights to go back to Marvel. Yeah, one or the other. Although it's Fox, right? You said?
Yeah.
I don't know. Fox You know, they don't really get along with Marvel, so I don't think there's gonna be anything that's gonna let them. They're gonna be willing to give up Fantastic Four to Marvel.
They've already given up Daredevil. They've given up, I believe, definitely Punisher. They've given up, what's his name? I think Ghost Rider is now back with Marvel. They're kind of giving up a lot of their smaller ones, except for the big two, X-Men and Fantastic Four. Oh, I forgot to mention, before I forget, Doctor Doom.
Oh.
You made a comparison.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna put the picture up right here.
If I've never played it myself, but there's this game called System Shock 2, and the cover of the game shows I think it's an AI called Shodan, and oh my god, it looks just like Doctor Doom, like no joke. Just like Doctor Doom. I was like, what the fuck is this? Oh, man.
How do you fuck up Doctor Doom? He's a man in an Iron Man-esque metal suit. You can't fuck that up. How do you fuck that up?
Oh,
try to complicate it, make it look like he just like he was covered in black trash bags, which got melted into his skin.
That's funny because I saw the Jeremy Jahns review, and when he said that this Doctor Doom is the equivalent of, Barakapool, at first I had a hard time imagining what he meant.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I saw it,
yeah. What the fuck am I looking at?
Spot on description. Like, spot on description.
When he's walking down the hallway trying to be all menacing and see it with these itty bitty green little eyes, I kept laughing throughout the whole thing. I'm supposed to take this seriously?
Oh, yeah. Also, Mr. Pendansky dies. It's that actor I told you about.
Oh, wait. The guy who was in The Incredible Hulk?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he was wasteful. I liked him as, that's the character that was supposed to be the leader in The Incredible Hulk, but it's like he's just, generic government asshole agent number 5073. Sorry to get off those tangents, but I kind of want to bring up those points because those were things that we were talking about right after we saw the movie. So yeah, Fant4stic. Don't watch it.
That's it.
Not worth your time.
Never.
Maybe if you saw it on Redbox for like...
No, not even then.
No.
The only time you'd go is if you're a Fantastic Four fan.
And you kind of want that completist angle.
Or you just really want to see for yourself how bad this movie really is.
We don't recommend it, but...
That's only 2 times I could see it making sense for someone to go watch the movie.
So I believe we've come to the end of this little, not marathon, but sort of like a cavalcade of catch-up reviews. Sorry, guys, that we kind of feel if we sound a bit tired now, like if we sound just as lifeless as the actors from Fant4stic. Right now, it is currently 12:53 AM. Yeah, 12:53 AM in the morning. So we are ready to call it a night. Hope you've enjoyed these reviews. Sorry that they came out late, but hopefully we'll have more reviews in the near future. So, I have been Andres Perez, aka Kaiju Noir.
And Pete.
And until next time, everybody, take care.